Last night started like so many others, quiet, ordinary, almost forgettable. I was sitting alone, scrolling through my phone, pretending I wasn't waiting for a message that never came. The house felt larger when no one spoke inside it. Too many rooms. Too much silence. That's when his name appeared on my screen. Come to the party for a bit. Just to talk. I stared at the message longer than I should have. He was a friend, someone I'd known for years. Someone safe. Someone familiar. And yet, something about the timing made my chest tighten. It was already late. The kind of hour when thoughts get heavier and choices feel less clear. I told myself it was harmless. The party was only a short walk away. When I reached it, the night air wrapped around me, cool and damp, carrying the smell of earth and grass. Moonlight spread softly across the fields, turning everything silver and unreal. Crickets sang like they were the only witnesses to our lives. He was already there, standing with his hands in his pockets, watching the field like he belonged to it. You came, he said, smiling. I nodded, suddenly unsure why my heart was beating faster. You said you wanted to talk. We walked slowly along the narrow path between the crops. Our shoulders brushed once, by accident, I told myself. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Like there were words waiting for permission to exist. He asked how I'd been. I almost laughed at the question. How honest am I allowed to be? Instead, I shrugged. Same as always. But inside, I knew that wasn't true. Things hadn't been the same for a while. At home, conversations had turned practical. Affection had become routine, almost scheduled. I felt more like a responsibility than a desire. Out here, under the open sky, I felt seen. He talked about his own loneliness, about nights that felt endless, about how some connections fade quietly without anyone noticing. I listened, realizing too late how deeply his words echoed my own thoughts. We stopped walking and sat near the edge of the field. The soil was cool beneath us. I hugged my knees, staring ahead, pretending not to notice how close he'd chosen to sit. You ever feel like you're standing right on the edge of something? He asked softly. I swallowed. All the time. The wind moved through the crops, making them whisper. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I was aware of everything, his breathing, the warmth beside me, the way my thoughts kept drifting to places they shouldn't. This is just a conversation, I told myself. Friends are allowed to talk, but deep down, I knew this night wasn't ordinary anymore. Something had already shifted. And as I sat there in the moonlit party, I wondered if accepting the invitation had been my first mistake, or the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name. The night seemed to stretch after that, as if time itself had slowed to watch us. We stayed seated near the edge of the party, the crops swaying gently around us, hiding us from the rest of the world. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt full, charged with things neither of us dared to say out loud. He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the darkness. Funny how peaceful this place is, he said. Yet it makes you think too much. I nodded. My thoughts were already racing. Being here felt easier than being at home. That realization scared me more than anything else. We talked about small things at first, memories from years ago, people we used to know, moments that had slipped through our fingers without us realizing their value. Every now and then, our laughter would fade too quickly, leaving behind a pause that lingered just a little too long. At some point, he turned toward me. I didn't notice right away, but I felt it, that quiet shift when someone's attention fully settles on you. When I finally looked at him, our eyes met, and neither of us looked away. You seem tired, he said. I am, I replied. But not the kind of tired sleep fixes. He didn't ask me to explain. Somehow, that made it worse. Or better. I couldn't tell. We started walking again, deeper into the party, the path narrowing until our arms brushed more often than not. Each time it happened, I felt a spark of awareness shoot through me. I told myself it was accidental. Still, I didn't move away. The air felt warmer now, heavier. I was painfully aware of my own body, of how close he was, of how easy it would be to stop walking and turn toward him. That thought came uninvited, and stayed. This is dangerous, a voice inside me whispered, but it feels good. He slowed his steps, and I matched them without thinking. Do you ever miss being wanted? He asked suddenly, his voice low. The question hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. The truth sat right there, pressing against my chest. Yes, I finally said. More than I should. He stopped walking. I did too. The field was quiet now, as if even the insects were listening. He stood close enough that I could feel the heat from his arm. I focused on the horizon, afraid that if I looked at him again, something would break. I don't want to make this complicated, he said softly. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then why does it feel like it already is? Neither of us moved. No one crossed a line. And yet, something invisible had already shifted between us. The space that once felt safe now felt fragile, stretched thin by unspoken desire and shared loneliness. In that moment, I understood the truth I'd been avoiding all night. Temptation doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it slips in quietly, wearing familiarity, patience, and understanding, waiting for you to stop resisting long enough to let it stay. We didn't decide to leave the party all at once. It happened gradually, like everything else that night, without a clear moment to point to and say this is where it went wrong. The air had grown cooler, and the quiet felt heavier now, pressing down on my chest. There's a room nearby, he said casually, as if it were just another thought passing through. We can sit there for a while. I hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough to know I should say no. Long enough to hear every reason I shouldn't follow him, and yet, my feet moved anyway. The room was small, simple, barely more than a shelter. A single light cast soft shadows on the walls, making the space feel closer than it was. When the door closed behind us, the sound echoed louder than it should have. Final. Ceiling. I stood near the doorway, suddenly unsure where to put my hands, my eyes, my thoughts. He sat down first, giving me space, too much space. The kind that feels intentional. You can sit, he said gently. I did, leaving just enough distance between us to pretend this was still harmless. My heart was racing now, loud in my ears. I tried to focus on my breathing, on the faint smell of wood and earth inside the room. Neither of us spoke for a while. In the silence, my thoughts grew reckless. I thought about home. About promises made without realizing how fragile they were. About how lonely I'd been feeling, and how warm this moment felt in comparison. I felt his hand shift slightly, closer to mine. It didn't touch me, not yet, but the awareness of it was almost worse. My fingers tingled, caught between pulling away and reaching out. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. I turned to look at him then. Really looked at him. His expression wasn't confident or sure. It was searching. Vulnerable. Waiting. The word sat on my tongue. Stop. One word. That's all it would take, but I didn't say it. Instead, I stayed still. And in that stillness, something broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to change everything. His hand brushed mine, light and uncertain, as if giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't. The touch wasn't bold or desperate. It was slow, careful, filled with questions neither of us voiced. My breath caught, and I felt the weight of the moment settle over me. This wasn't just about desire anymore. It was about choosing this feeling over everything I'd left behind. Somewhere deep inside, guilt stirred, but it was quiet, drowned out by the warmth of closeness, by the comfort of being wanted in a way I hadn't felt in so long. The light flickered softly above us. The room felt smaller now, the walls closer, the world outside impossibly far away. And as I sat there, caught between who I was and who I was becoming in that moment, I knew there was no turning back, not because we'd gone too far, but because I'd already chosen not to walk away. Morning came quietly, as if it didn't want to accuse me. The light crept in slowly, soft and pale, touching everything without judgment. I stood alone outside, breathing in the cool air, trying to convince myself that the night hadn't changed me. That I could step back into my life as if nothing had happened, but something had. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every step echoed with thoughts I didn't know how to organize. I replayed the night over and over, not the details, but the feeling. The closeness. The choice I'd made by staying silent when I should have spoken. At home, everything looked the same. The walls. The furniture. The familiar quiet. And yet, it all felt heavier, like I was moving through a version of my life that no longer fit quite right. When I was asked how my night had been, I answered without thinking. Fine. The word tasted wrong. I avoided eye contact after that. Not because I was afraid of being discovered, but because I was afraid of what I might see reflected back at me. Guilt has a way of hiding in ordinary moments, in the pause before answering a question, in the distance that suddenly feels intentional. Later, when I was alone again, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Did you get home safe? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering just above the reply bar. Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. Safe didn't feel like the right word anymore. Neither did regret. What I felt was something messier, confusion wrapped around desire, tied tightly with shame. I thought about deleting the message. About pretending this was the end of it. A single night, sealed away in silence, but silence had already failed me once. Outside, the day went on as if nothing had shifted. People laughed. Life continued. Only I seemed to be standing still, caught between the comfort of routine and the pull of something I knew I shouldn't want. I wondered what it meant that I missed the way he'd looked at me. That part scared me the most. The phone buzzed again, still unanswered. I didn't know if replying would be another mistake, or the beginning of something I wasn't brave enough to admit out loud. All I knew was this: whatever line I'd crossed, I couldn't uncross it. And as I stood there, staring at the screen, I realized the hardest part of infidelity isn't the moment it happens. It's waking up afterward and having to decide who you're going to be next.